Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about something that we all desperately need, but I don't think we're talking about enough, and that is our relationship to exercise and movement. And so many people want to feel stronger and more vibrant in their bodies, and yet there's a lot of messages that we constantly hear in about shame around our bodies and how we should look. And I'm so thrilled to have Martha Munroe here with me today, who's written an extraordinary book called Attuned Exercise to talk about this very topic. So welcome, Martha.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Louisa.
So I met Martha many years ago. She was one of my students in my Certificate of Applied Positive Psychology class. And she was always very scholarly and always knew the research. And so when I found out that she wrote a book, I thought, this book is going to be really well written and really thoughtful. And I think, Martha, what you've done is you've created a book that is so needed because I didn't think about it myself. I didn't think about my relationship with exercise. I always thought it was just something that I needed to do every day, and it was so important to do. But as I got older, I think I lost that relationship with exercise that I used to have. So I think it's so good that you've tapped into something that I think really nobody is talking about. And you say in the book that we're not lazy, about exercise. It's just that we're tired, we're scared, and we're smart. So, why do you believe that it's important to start with the message that our struggles with exercise are not personal failings?
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start. And I think, we are living in a time where we all know that exercise is good for us. We know that it's good for us physically. We know that it's good for our mental health and our well-being. And yet, so many of us struggle with either getting going with exercise, being consistent with exercise over time. And the dominant paradigm is like, well, this is a willpower problem. That it's just a matter of, buck up and get down to business, and it's just willpower. And really what this paradigm shift is that our relationships with our bodies are much more complicated than that. And the way that we exercise, the way that we move is intrinsically connected to our experience of being an embodied person in the world. And so we have all of these layers of personal history. We have, how we grew up and how exercise or sports or whatever we were involved with was framed through our adulthood. That may have shifted and changed through all of these seasons and chapters in life. We have our layers of personal experiences. We have our moments where we've tried and it's, maybe it's a little bit on again, off again relationship with exercise, this type of thing. And we have all of these layers of what society has told us exercise is for, what we should be doing, particularly as women or people socialized as female, to kind of control the body and manipulate the body and be always striving to, look a certain way and be a certain way. And all of that layer of meaning is all within our relationship with exercise. And so there might be some resistance to that, right? That there's wisdom in resisting a paradigm that tells you your worth is related to what you look like,
Yeah,
right? There's,
I
it
don't,
makes sense. There's tension in that relationship. And so that's the part where it's like, yeah, we're smart. And it's there, we're not here because of vanity, right? And that struggle with body image as it relates to exercise is not about vanity. It's really about safety and belonging and trying to, feel good. It's about something much bigger than that. So
yeah.
that's the key reframe is it's not just willpower. It's about something much bigger than that.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you said that because So much of it, like if you think about the diet culture, for example, it's a lot about, do you have the willpower to eat properly or whatever? But I think exercise gets wrapped up in that as well, that
Yeah.
exercising is about losing weight.
Yeah.
And in the book, you talk about what happens to us emotionally, motivationally, for example, when we can unhook that idea that exercise is not about weight loss.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when you look at the large scale meta analysis of exercise and weight control, we know that exercise doesn't lead to weight loss. And this is this thing that, like, in the marketing of fitness is continually focused on, right? But research doesn't support that. And so, on the like cognitive level, we need to start to know that and understand that. And then on the experiential level, right, when we look at motivation, and this was one of the things that I saw over, many years in the fitness industry, as the people that were really focused on these aesthetic goals and appearance-based goals, it was always like way too intense and then nothing at all, and way too intense. And this focus on, kind of quick fixes, if we think about models of motivation, we're all the way in like the furthest, most extrinsic motivation. And what I talk about in the book is shifting more towards both valuing the intrinsic sources of motivation that we have, doing things that we just love and are enjoyable, like dancing or taking a walk with a friend or going hiking, whatever the things that bring us joy. But also, if we want to do something like work on our cardio capacity or build some strength or what have you, or recover from an injury, that there's a version of motivation that is more aligned with ourself and our true self, and that isn't about having to prove something to something else and about this external validation, but about something that's aligned more fully with our version of caring for ourselves and the way that we want to show up in the world. And when our motivation comes from that place, it's a lot deeper roots. It's
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
And so you talk about this idea that we have to move from this idea that we're trying to fix our bodies to really what we're doing is we're caring for our bodies. And I always call it hygiene. I sort of equate it to brushing your teeth, having a shower every morning, and exercise as kind of essential just to taking care of your body. I guess that's what hygiene is, really, is taking care of the things you need to do to keep your body in good health, right? I consider it to be just good for yourself, whether it's mentally or physically. So how do people, you talk about some strategies, how do people move from that? And what I love is you talk about this idea of self-objectification. And it's so true. As I got older and I looked in the mirror and with menopause, I gained a lot of weight that I've been able to take off some, but not all of it. And so now when I look in the mirror, I don't have the same relationship with my body that I had before because I'm objectifying myself, because I
Yeah.
don't look the same as I did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And to move from self-objectification to embodiment, I love that shift. And I think that shift helps with the motivation as well. But can you maybe share tips on how I can make that shift? How can I stop objectifying my body as, here's how I look, to here's how I feel, here's how I'm
Yeah.
embodying. Here's my connection. How can I change that connection to my body?
Yeah, and I'd say that the very first step is like an absolute heaping helping of self-compassion, right? It makes sense that we self-objectify because that's what society teaches us to do and trains us to do. Where, this whole concept of normative discontent, where for women it's considered normal to dislike your body,
Exactly.
to to see it as defective, to see it as constantly needing improvement, and then even if improvement is achieved than continual maintenance. So that even if you do get to some semblance of normative beauty standards, you always have to hustle in order to maintain that. And that we see our bodies in their natural state as defective, right? So a huge heaping helping of self-compassion that we feel this way and that we have this tendency to self-objectify because it makes sense in the cultural and social contexts that we're in. So we can start from that. We can then start to unravel some of these layers and some of these narratives that we absorbed mostly tacitly, right? Nobody told you when you were a kid, oh, your worth is what you look like, so you better do that. We absorbed this just from the society around us. And, you know, for most of us, for periods of time, we didn't question it. And it's frequently, you know, and this is what I think is so helpful about taking a developmental lifespan lens, is that it's often at these moments of transition in life that we take a look at some of these values that are in the system. So, you know, for many women, it might be the transition to motherhood. We start thinking, oh, what is this relationship to this body? Or it could be an illness or somebody close to you dealing with an illness. We reevaluate the relationship to the body, or through transition of menopause and aging, right? We know at that transition, you're like, I could double down on the values and try to, you know, do everything, body control and anti-aging and all these things, or I can accept that like this is part of life, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of these transition moments where we're like, hang on a second, and we can start to almost like see the matrix, right? And
Yeah.
that's sort of like what's presented in the book is like, well, let's look at actually this system. And so the first section of the book is kind of called Clearing the Ground. So we got to kind
Right.
of take a look. What's there? Like what's diet culture? What are the things that we've taught, absorbed about, you know, performing our gender and being, you know, if you're a woman in the world and what that means.
Yeah.
And then we start to value our subjective experience. So that self-objectification on one end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum is subjectively experiencing the body, right? So the body as object versus my body as me. And so I think of that as the body as something you have, an object to shape, versus my body is something I am.
I
And
love
that
that.
like, this is my aliveness. This is my
Yeah.
existence in the world.
And you know, when you talk about some of these messages, I hear most of these messages from other women,
Yeah.
right? Like I remember when I got pregnant, or there was a woman that I knew who, you know, she looked great, you know, during pregnancy, and she said, you know, really you don't have to gain more than 15 pounds during pregnancy. Like it's
Yeah.
not, you know, it's not a and meanwhile, when I got pregnant, I didn't really care about how much I weighed. I was just sort of concerned with my baby and you know, and I didn't think about, oh, am I gaining weight?
Yeah.
I just thought, of course I'm going to gain weight. I'm pregnant, but you know, then I thought to myself, oh, maybe I ate too much. Maybe, you know, so you hear, I'm hearing most of these messages again, like we hear them in society, but I think it's women have been so socialized to believe that we do need to look pretty all the time. And that I remember talking to Alice Domar, who does a lot of research on women and stress. And she said, women stress about a lot of things, but every woman she talks to is stressed about being thin.
Yeah.
There's this idea of being thin. And in the book, when you talked about, can we move to that attunement? Can we move to that feeling, that subject, like you just said, this subjective feeling of vitality in my body, as opposed to looking in the mirror and saying, what do I need to fix? Instead, to say, how do I want to feel in my body and focus on that? But it's so hard to do, Martha.
Yeah.
What do you suggest for people who are so caught up in the diet, in, you know, how I look tells the world that I'm exercising and I got my life together. And I mean, what do you tell women who are so caught up in that culture?
I mean, I feel like generally where I situate myself is people are ready for this work when they're ready for it. And like you said about, there is a lot of women policing other women or judging other women. And I think that that's because when you're wrapped up in it and you're so heavily invested in it
Yeah.
personally, like you're hungry all the time and you're miserable and you're spending hundreds or thousands of dollars every month on beautification and all
Yes.
of these things, right? And somebody is saying, I don't choose to live that way, then that can make those people very defensive, right? And cling to it. And it's like, well, my job isn't to convince anybody to do anything, but if you're fed up of that, I'll show you how we can shift.
Read the book.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing. Like so many times when I was a personal trainer, I would do these intakes with people, and I'd be like, "Hey, tell me about your relationship with exercise, your history with exercise." And they would give me this long story of all of these diets they've tried, all of these times they've, gained and lost and felt bad about themselves, and really, struggling with self-efficacy around exercise. And it was like, yeah, this is about something so much more than like what your goal is. And, I always say that, like, when you're a personal trainer and you're spending an hour with somebody on a regular basis, you're kind of almost their coach or their therapist as well, because you talk about your life, you talk about what's going on, all of these things, right? And so within the relationship to exercise, there is this opportunity to practice something different. And I talk a lot about that towards the end of the book, is that a lot of the ways that we're doing things with this hustle, this shame, perfectionism, objectification, we're doing that in our whole lives. It's not just
Yeah.
in our relationship to exercise. We're struggling with perfectionism everywhere, and we bring that to exercise. But within that, there's this opportunity that's like, well, if I start to practice and use the exercise moment as a place to practice listening to my body. What do I feel? What does it feel like when I do the exercises that I do? Do I feel like, yes, yum, this sounds great? Or do I feel like, ugh, I don't want to do that? Do I have a tendency to push myself beyond what's comfortable? Or am I listening to what I feel I need on that day? Am I honoring my need to rest when I need to rest? Am I honoring my need for water, for food, right? Like, are all of these basic things. And that's kind of what one of the central things is in our journey, as a woman and as a young woman. We learn to distrust our body.
Yes.
You
Yes.
cannot trust your hunger. You cannot trust your desire. You cannot trust your body to be just okay as it is, right? We feel that we've undermined trust, and that all of the layers in which we exist as a body are focused on control. And so what we're moving back towards with practicing attunement, and exercise is a great space to explore that, is actually trusting your body.
Yeah. And I think I really like that part of the book when you talk about the seasons of life, because I at a certain point I lost trust in my body. I always used to be able to do certain things. And then when you lose that trust, it's almost like you stop and you say, well, I can't exercise because my knees hurt, or I can't ski anymore because what if I fall? Then I could be, destroyed for the rest of my life or whatever. And I think gaining that trust again and realizing that, yeah, when you're 60, yeah, you might have to do different kinds of exercise, and that's okay. It's not a failure, but learn how to trust in what you can do and continue to do rather than abandoning exercise altogether. What
Yeah,
what are your
absolutely.
thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the seasons of life is such an important thing, right? I mean, when you and I first met, 10 years ago, I was competing in weightlifting, lifting these huge
Yeah,
heavy weights, and I think I was training, 5 days a week for about 2 hours. And
yeah,
then I had a child, and that doesn't fit my life anymore, right? I can't train that way because one, I don't have the time. Two, I don't have the energy. You have a baby that's not sleeping through the night. You're not going to be in the gym for 2 hours. Your life is hectic. You don't want to be sore when you're doing all of the things that you're doing. And so, your life doesn't look like it does in your 40s as it did in your 20s. So why would
right.
your relationship with exercise look that way?
Yeah,
And it's a similar struggle for people who are athletic or who, were on sports teams. I was talking to someone the other day. I was like, they were a really competitive athlete, but the whole time they were training, the coach does it. I don't have to make any decisions. They tell me what the workout is. I just follow it. And so there really hasn't been a practice of trusting yourself. And it is brave to come back to exercise if there's been a long break or you're in a new life chapter, and you have to really cultivate that curiosity of like, I want exercise to be in my life. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like right now. Right. And so for so many people, there is a chapter of exploring some different things and seeing what suits for the chapter of life that
yeah,
each person is in.
yeah, exactly. So Martha, if someone is feeling disconnected from their body right now, what is one thing they can do? I know you talked about self-compassion, but is there another tool that you can share with us that can reconnect us to our bodies?
Yeah, I mean, self compassion is huge, but also just start to give yourself permission to notice what you feel in your body. So in the book, when I talk about, starting exercise, if you're not exercising, is like, what's the smallest possible experiment that you can do so that you can start to notice how you feel when you do things. And so it's really this permission slip to have a new version of a relationship with exercise. And it's like any relationship. If you, I liken it to dating. If you want more of the same, keep picking the same. But if you want something different, you're going to have to choose something different. And so that permission slip to be in that curiosity space, try something small, notice how you feel. Not everything you try is going to be the right fit for you. It's like trying on different outfits or different styles, right? If you're like, okay, I tried a yoga class and you know what, that one wasn't for me, maybe the vibe of the studio or the instructor wasn't the right fit. Okay, that's fine. That's information, that's feedback. Let's try something else. And
Yeah.
that permission slip to kind of be a dabbler for a little bit and find what feels like a good place to start, and start small, smaller than you think, because that's where sustainability happens. Of like, yeah, if we go from 0 to 100, it's going to be hard to maintain that. But if we start with, you know what, for 5 minutes a day, I'm going to get down on my yoga mat, I'm going to do a few core exercises, see how that feels, see if that adds anything to my life. Or you know what, a few times a week, I'm going to put on some Dance Mix 93 and I'm going to dance around my kitchen and see how I feel when I just do something different with my body.
Yeah. And I think we have to resist those messages from people
Yeah.
who say you're not doing enough. If you're not doing this, you're failing. If you're not, and just decide that whatever exercise we feel is good for our bodies
Yeah.
is good enough, is good
Yeah.
enough.
And you
Now,
have to,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
Yeah, you have to cultivate that resistant stance to these messages. We've all
Yeah.
absorbed these, I call them mindsets about exercise, right? That like it has to be an hour, you have to be pushing as hard as you can. You should leave drenched in sweat, feeling like your muscles are just like screaming. You got to be sore the next day or it doesn't count. All this no pain, no gain. maximum effort, always high intensity, we have to be aware that like we have some of those beliefs and start to challenge them a little bit. We lose nothing by being more generous with our relationship with exercise, and we gain so much because now we have like a soft place to start.
Yes. And so, Martha, wrapping up, I'm wondering for people who are picking up this book, what is the transformation that you would like that you're hoping, not that you would like, but just what was the hope when you wrote this book that people would pick it up? And what was the transformation that you were hoping people would experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first is like, there's hope. If you've struggled to make this exercise thing a part of your life, there's hope. You're not alone. You're not a failure. I mean, so many amazing, brilliant, talented women who struggle with exercise, and they're almost embarrassed that like this has been a thing that they haven't been able to integrate with their life. And so there is hope, and you're not alone is number one. And then number two, that not only can you have a version of exercise that doesn't make you feel worse about yourself, that doesn't make you feel like you have to hustle and perform and always be doing, 110%, but you can have a relationship with exercise that allows you to practice tuning into yourself, that allows you to practice taking up space, that allows you to practice feeling into your authentic self and what you need so that it can blossom outward into the rest of your life to really live a more attuned and authentic and aligned life.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to have links to the book below, and I think it's a great book. People always are rethinking exercise at the beginning of the year, but this could also be a great Christmas gift for people. Apparently, it fits into a stocking. Is that correct, Martha?
Yes, it's exactly stocking
Yeah,
sized.
there you go. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for writing this book. I think a lot of people I know struggle with exercise. And yet, for mental health, and we know with the research in positive psychology, not only good for your body, but good for your mind. And if your book can just change the relationship that we have with our bodies, I think it's going to be such a great contribution to well-being for everyone here in Canada, especially our listeners and our members. So thank you so much, Martha.
Thank you so much for having me, Louisa. It's been a pleasure.